Potaholic.
A potaholic is someone that smokes marijuana on a daily basis. At least 40 million people in the United States smoke marijuana today. As a matter of fact, more kids are smoking marijuana than they're smoking cigarettes.
Potaholic.
Parents should know what to say to their children about marijuana before they try it, and how to handle the situation should it arise.
Potaholic, available at all B. Dalton booksellers and at Bookworks in South Miami, or call to order direct.
Drug use in today's society is probably the fastest growing problem we may face. The reason could be that we aren't informed well enough about the damaging effects drugs have on our bodies and minds. One drug that hasn't had proper attention is marijuana. The need for more information on this drug is apparent in a new book just published called Potaholics. News director Rebecca Pierto had the opportunity yesterday to speak with the author of the book, Margaret Reeves, about why we need more accurate information on marijuana.
Author of the new book, Potaholic. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your book has an interesting premise. What is the premise of your book?
That marijuana is much more harmful than people are realizing that it is. And there are people out there, which I coined the term potaholic, and they use marijuana continuously, day in and day out, at least on a daily basis, and they think that it's not harming them, and when in fact it actually is.
Why do you think that perception is? It has been considered less of a mind-altering or serious drug in our culture, marijuana.
Because there are short-term effects. But basically with marijuana and cocaine, when you compare the two, people on cocaine usually get burned out faster than they do on marijuana. Marijuana takes a period of 5 to 10 years when people start realizing that they have buildup of THC in their brain cells, or lack of motivation, lung problems, and serious lung problems resembling cigarette smoking over a period of 20 years for 18-year-olds.
How did you get the idea for this book, Potaholic? What was the story behind it?
Yes, when I was working on my Master of Science degree in developmental counseling, I worked with teenagers that were, some of them were heavily into drugs, and they felt that as long as they stayed away from the heavier drugs, cocaine or whatever, that it would be okay for them to indulge in marijuana. And I realized that any kind of mind alteration is going to affect you in one way or the other, and I went in search of information in the libraries, and the only thing I found was really outdated material and things pertaining to the laws, which are obsolete anyway, and it was really boring stuff. And so I went to the modern, updated information that was out and researched American Council for Drug Education and a few other sources, and they had good information. But still, it was very boring.
So how does Potaholic differ?
Potaholic is different because it's down to earth. It talks about the problem. It deals with the problem the way it really is. It talks to the kids as well as to the parents on issues such as searching your kid's room, finding a bag of marijuana.
What do you advise a parent in that type of situation?
I don't think that's going to solve anything to search their room, because first of all, you wouldn't like them searching your room, and that's teaching them, treating them like a thief, and behavior that's not really setting a good example. That's not really going to stop it by finding things and confronting them with it, unless you do it in a very calm, I know it's hard to be calm in a time like that, but mature manner, with back in your mind the idea that there are some reasons that the child is indulging in mind-altering behavior because they have problems or something.
Do you think that it's more than just peer pressure?
I think peer pressure is a big factor in marijuana use. Any kind of drug use, I think it's a big motivating factor for many kids. But beyond that, yes, it is more. It's an escape to dealing with their problems in a way that they can't handle stress. And that's basically any type of drug use is that.
What's a typical profile of a potaholic? You mentioned that there is an addictive type of personality. Are these people also prone to become addicted to other drugs?
Well, it hasn't been scientifically proven that there is such a thing as a person that's born that way. Therefore, you can't say it. But I believe that there is maybe some propensity in some people to try drugs and stick with them to handle life or to live on a day-to-day basis. Yes, I think that people that are usually born that way, and that either they can, once introduced to drugs, if they get introduced to them, they might stick with them, no matter how good of a upbringing or whatever.
So it's the same type of person that might become an alcoholic,
exactly,
or addicted to heroin?
Exactly. The idea is mind alteration. Although marijuana is not so much physically addicting like perhaps heroin or alcohol, it's more mentally addicting.
What's been the response so far from parents and from teenagers to your book?
Well, parents are very interested in learning how, if it's at all possible, to prevent the problem from happening, and talking to their kids beforehand, informing them about drugs, teaching them, showing them that, and also setting a good example is part of it. And teenagers and, like I told you before, the yuppie type of people that have been smoking it for a few years now are realizing now that they are coming up with information, and that old saying that haven't proven that yet isn't true anymore.
So there are aspects to marijuana that we don't even know about yet that are possibly very serious.
Yes, you know, anything you put in your body, you know, that's not natural, I mean, it's going to cause problems. So I don't see how they can say it's not going to harm you at all, because marijuana has now been linked to causing cancer, brain damage, and irreparable damage to the reproductive system and all major organs in the body.
Well, Margaret Valladares, it is a book that is needed. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
We'll be back with sports and weather right after this. Please stay tuned.
Later in a moment. She's the author of a psychological study of the marijuana user and also the effect the drug has on those that would abuse marijuana. And the author discusses new scientific evidence, which we'll touch on, of damage to cells throughout the entire body, as well as research linking pot smoking to cancer. Let's meet the author of this book that you're about to see. In our studio tonight is Margaret Valladares. And Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Nice to have you in our studio tonight. We welcome you to Something on 17. My first thought when I picked up Potaholic, two questions. Let's talk about semantics for a moment. I always thought drug addict would suffice. In the beginning, I think in the 1930s and 1940s, pot smokers were called dope fiends. But now all of a sudden you're saying potaholic. Mm-hmm. Why?
Because I liked it, when I write a book, I like the title to tell the people what it's about, so they don't have to either determine they're going to buy it on the shelf or have to thumb through it, which they might do. Also, I wanted a book that would appeal to young children and to adults, that would catch their eye and be interesting to them, because while there is information out by credible, reliable, respectable sources, nobody's motivated to read it because it just is not interesting enough for them.
I see. So because when I got this book, and I'll show it this way, it's 28 pages. Okay. Now, when you say it's comprehensive, I have gone through here, Margaret. I found nothing that I construed as a revelation about marijuana. I didn't find any startling facts that I had not known about before. Plus, on top of all this, I think pot smoking is somewhat blasé today, isn't it?
Well, you see, first of all, someone that has a problem with marijuana is not going to sit down, or maybe someone that doesn't have a problem with marijuana is going to sit down and read a book that's really thick and boring. And that's what I just said, that there's a lot of information out, but it's not, people are not motivated to read it.
So this is skinny and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying.
That's all right. That's what I said. Okay, and now, what was your next question?
My next question was, I think that reefer is somewhat blasé. I've talked with many high school principals. The kids are going back to beer. They're not smoking that much pot. And if they have the money, it's cocaine, of course.
Well, that's the point. They don't have the money, first of all. Secondly, is that 4 million children are smoking marijuana. 2.8 million smoke cigarettes. Based on surveys, seizures, and arrests, 20% at least of the United States smokes marijuana.
Today?
And more than that, at least. But those studies are based on the percentage of drug that is seized, which is 6%, 7%, 93% gets on the street. So.
And your figures, I might add, I can add credence to these. These come from the two sources, the American Council for Drug Education and also the American Lung Society. So these
and
figures
other sources too.
Yeah, so that you're not just
I'm not making
throwing these figures out. So you're saying a lot of children still smoke pot?
Yes, a lot of them are doing it. 1 in 14 high school seniors do it daily. 50% of them 5 years later are still doing it.
Why the subject of marijuana for you, Margaret? I know that your background, you have a master's in developmental psychology. Have you worked with potaholics?
I used to work with children and teenagers that had drug problems, and a lot of them, like you said, thought that marijuana was not harmful, and they focused their attention, while most people do, on the harmful effects of cocaine. And when they were doing it and trying marijuana, I couldn't present to them any information that would convince them that it was harmful to them. So I went in search of information. I didn't find too much back in those days. Now there's more information out. And so I put together something that would be interesting for them to read and that they will pick up and relate to and believe, because a lot of children do not believe the system.
Do you believe that marijuana, and you use the word quite often in your book, Potaholic, you use the word recreational usage. Now, aren't there those that can smoke a joint once a weekend or maybe 3 or 4 times a month, and it's a recreational situation? There's nothing addictive that at least from my assumption about this sort of usage.
It's a very good question, because the definition of a potaholic or any kind of an addict is based on a functional rather than constitutional, what kind of person they are. It's determined by overt behavior. An addict, the definition of an addict is based on how and why a drug is used. A person that goes to a college party and is offered a marijuana joint in lieu of a beer or concomitantly with a beer, that type of a definition is not really, you wouldn't define someone like that as an addict.
Is that okay with you? An occasional joint, although you've written this book about the insidious aspect of smoking too much marijuana, would you also say there are some that can just smoke a joint once in a while and enjoy it for the recreational and social benefits?
Well, you see, we can talk about why man in general uses drugs. It's been, comparative psychologists have based it on 3 decisive factors. Number 1, drug use is universal to the human species. Number 2, drug use has been as old as the human species itself. Number 3, drug use is unique to the human species. Animals do not use drugs. Man is the only type of animal that employs drugs on himself.
But Margaret, you didn't answer my question.
If you give me a chance, I will. Okay, the second part is that man uses drugs to cope with stress. Animals use drugs, do not use drugs, but they have other ways of coping with stress, such as locomotion and manipulating the environment. Men can also employ defense mechanisms, which projection, those type of things. But they use it basically, young and old, to cope with physical and mental stress of everyday life. Now, you can also substitute those activities for positive things such as painting, art, writing, exercise, sports, whatever you want to, substitute it with. You don't have to use drugs because drug use is just escape.
Not even one joint?
Well, I find that a lot of people either use it a lot or they don't use it at all.
Now, I wanted to, if we may, for just a moment, let's take a look. And in here, for example, you have a questionnaire, which I found most interesting. It talks about how often the drug is used, who uses it, it's used in what particular environment, and this is the questionnaire. And then, of course, you go into other aspects about the parents and also the children and what can be done, at least this information for them. Your book is available in South Florida at certain bookstores, Margaret, and the feedback at this point, how long have you had it on the shelves?
It's been on the shelf since July at B. Dalton Booksellers and a few other small bookstores like Bookworks. And it's been selling quite well, according to the bookstores. The questionnaire is something else that the children and teenagers can relate to. They can look at it and buy the book because they realize that, they might see something in themselves or someone they know, or a relative, or a friend.
What about that big question that marijuana will lead to other drugs? If one is, say, drinking beer or drinking wine, smoking a few joints, eventually that individual or those individuals gravitate towards cocaine and amphetamines and barbiturates and heroin, and then start reading communist literature and then go to Russia and on and on and on.
Well, the stepping stone theory has been disproven a long time ago, many years ago. There were studies saying that marijuana usage led to heroin. But also you can probably relate those people that had been breastfed or something. The studies can be misleading. You have to really watch your sources.
So that you don't make those connections.
No, that's totally.
Now, the major symptoms, and we'll touch this, our final thought, in our studio, Margaret Valladares. And Margaret, I was thinking of what are the obvious symptoms. You were talking about covertly and overtly Let's go through some of the obvious symptoms if someone is smoking too much dope, and what happens.
What do you mean?
What are the symptoms
of what?
Smoking too much reefer?
Well, first of all, they have lack of motivation. Amotivational syndrome has been clinically proven. They lose their concentration, they lose their short-term memory, they become confused, they cannot develop, they cannot grasp any new concepts. That learning is useless to go to school stoned or to take a test stoned. They become lethargic. Marijuana has a number of effects on the brain. Otherwise, it couldn't be psychoactive.
We had talked earlier about cancer linkage with
yes,
pot
there
smoking.
have been studies between 18 and 20-year-olds that had surgically removed tissues from their lungs, resembled 20 years of cigarette smoking, pre-emphysemic changes in the basal cells lining the airways. And that's, one cigarette. I mean, one marijuana joint is worse than 10 cigarettes.
Okay. And it also put Oreo cookies into the Hall of Fame, I think, which is also part of it. But here it is, Potaholic. Lots of information in our studio. The author, I know you're working on a screenplay now, aren't you?
Yes.
Margaret. So I'm glad you were in our studio tonight. And as Margaret had said, this book is available at selected bookstores in South Florida. And if you know someone that has a problem with marijuana, lots of answers and enlightenment in this particular work. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks for being.
Stay tuned. Meredith is next on Something on 17, a man that's been on our show a few times. We're glad to have him back, and a most interesting topic will be discussed very shortly, so do stay with us.
Welcome back. Cubanazo Redneck, a whole new way of looking at Cubans and Americans. It's a book that's been written by Margaret Valladares, who is with us this morning. How are you doing today?
Fine.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Cubanazo Redneck, number one, why in the world did you write a book by that name?
Well, because I live in Miami, and a lot of people have said a lot of comments about Cubans and Americans, and finally I've written them down in a humorous way, not to offend anybody, but I'm a writer. I've written 5 books, and I find that if you put a good title on a book, people will be more interested in it. I remember being in a restaurant one day with my husband, or going to the restaurant. It was pouring rain, and I had my son in my arms, and I had to park outside of the valet, and there was all these cars parked in the valet. And I said to him, my goodness, what are we going to do? And I came up with my son and all, and I fell. Nothing happened to him. And I said to my husband, why do they park there? And he goes, well, because they're Cubanazo. And I go, what does that mean? And so he told me that it's an exaggerated Cuban that goes all out to be Cuban, the opposite of a redneck who goes out with the cowboy hat and the jeans and the Confederate license tag to be recognized as American. The Cuban goes with the Guayabera and the hats and the Vic cigars. So I thought I'd put the Cubans, which is the Cubanazo, and the opposite of redneck for the title to get your attention. And I know a lot of Americans don't know what Cubanazo means, but they do know what redneck means. And a lot of Cubans don't know what redneck means, but they do know what Cubanazo means. So
I think they might be able to figure it out if they just think about it.
Yeah.
You just mentioned that this is done, in essence, it's done tongue-in-cheek. But there's some phrases in here, and there are some things in here that I think some people might find really offensive. Have you been getting any kind of negative feedback from your Cuban friends or your American friends?
No, not at all.
None whatsoever?
No. Well, I mean, most people like it. As a matter of fact, I received a letter from the mayor of Miami, Xavier Suarez, and the president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, Luis Sabines, and they enjoyed the book very much. But you got to bear in mind, this is based on exaggerated stereotypes. Everybody's an individual. But, most stereotypes are based on some truth. And I wanted to exaggerate them more so people can laugh at them and say, well, yeah, that happened to me once, and yes, I know. But, I don't attack, it's not pro-Cuban or pro-American or anti-Cuban, anti-American. I go right down the middle and bring out both the good and the bad points.
Okay, let's look at one instance where you talk about what a Cuban works like and what an American works like. Do you recall writing that particular segment?
I think it's called Cubans in Business.
Yes, Cubans in Business and Americans in Business. And some of the things, okay, that I can just bring out very briefly. Doing business with Americans, they arrive on time, take short lunch breaks, and stay until the job is finished. What's it like doing business with Cubans? Unbearable. Okay, now that's exaggerated and that's tongue-in-cheek?
Yes.
Okay. Another one, Americans, their prices are usually more fair irregardless of your finances, and yet for the Cubans it says their prices are usually too high and many times based on what they estimate your finances to be. Again, this is something that's exaggerated.
Well, I think doing business with Cubans tend to be more friendly and more relaxed when they do business with you. They treat you more like family. Americans are more serious. Like, for instance, there's a big difference in a Cuban television station than an American Cuban station.
For example?
Because, well, right now, if there were Cubans here, there'd be a whole bunch of them sitting there talking and making probably a lot of noise. But no, but right here, you could drop a pin in here. You know. But they take, in a sense, they take everything that's serious as a joke, and they take everything that's as a joke seriously sometimes.
You know, we have an enormous Cuban population in South Florida and in Miami, and I think probably as a result of that, we've got a lot of good businesses that have come in. Because in essence, as you even mentioned in here, and I would like you to explain that, you say that we've had an enormous infiltration of Cubans, but they lost everything in Cuba. They came to this country, and they started from scratch, and they have now built businesses. Unfortunately, there is still a stereotype towards the Cubans. Do you think that this book, in some of the instances like I just read, will make people say, aha, see, I knew it all the time. That's really what they're like?
I think that a lot of people have said to me that they have learned a lot about Americans from reading the book and a lot about Cubans, because there are our customs as an American and there's the Cuban customs, which are, I find, sometimes practiced without really knowing the history of, for example, chaperones.
Chaperones?
Yes, the young Cuban ladies have to have chaperones because it looks better if you're there with a chaperone. Not that they're going to do anything or serve really any purpose or function. They might even leave the movie theater while you're there on your date, but it looks better for purposes. And that type of thing is being phased out, but it's still, I think that the Americans should understand that it's more of it's not really going to serve any purpose, the chaperone, but they are there as for appearance's sake only.
What do you see as the differences between quote-unquote American mothers, and I want to say quote-unquote so you at home understand this book is tongue-in-cheek, and the Cuban mothers? What do you see as the difference?
Well, the American mother is more interested in being someone in her own right, having more things to do than change diapers, and the Cuban mother feels that it's more important to be a good mother. You never send your kid to school forgetting a raincoat or something that they might need, or a sweater, because that would be a very stigmatic thing, that you're a neglectful mother. But I think that's changing now. I think the Cubans are changing and the Americans are changing too. But there is a difference between that. American mothers like to be on the slim side, look good, dress well. Cuban mothers like that too. But American mothers want more natural things for their kids, like, they let them go out without shoes and be more relaxed about everything, and the Cuban mothers want their kids to look like Little Lord Fauntleroy sometimes.
What do you consider yourself? You're a mother. What kind of a mother are you?
Well, I'm a mixture.
Where were you born, quickly?
I was born in Hialeah.
Okay, you were born in Florida. And you consider yourself, and we're almost out of time, you are a American or Cuban mother?
I'm a Ameri-Cuban.
Which is?
Which is a mixture of the both. I believe in doing something on my own, but I'm there at home writing, so I'm with my kids too.
And spending a lot of time in helping them grow and develop.
Yes.
Well, let me tell you something, Margaret. I hope a lot of people do read your book and learn something from it. It's been a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you again.
Okay.
Thanks. Good luck.
Thanks.
Stay with us. We'll be right back to talk to Chris Hunter and What's Hot.
You may not have realized it, but there's a new breed of South Floridian called Ameri-Cubans. Our guest, Margaret Valladares, coined the phrase in her book, Cubanazo Redneck. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for
Explain the book, if you could, first of all.
Well, it's a comparison between the American and the Cuban cultures based on a little bit exaggerated stereotypes, which, as we well know, that most of those are based on some sort of truth to them. And it is to bring, the purpose of the book is to bring Cubans and Americans to a better understanding between each other, because they all know that they each practice different customs and dress differently and eat differently, but they don't know why, and I know why, so I'm trying to enlighten them in a humorous way so they can tolerate it better.
You know why, because you married a Cuban man.
Yes, and I've been, involved with the Cuban culture for many years now, since they've been here, and I attend a lot of their social functions and eat with them and do a lot of things with them. So I really have first-hand experience.
So the point of it is, though, not to point out that it's good, bad, or indifferent, just
that's the way they are.
About it.
The Latin people really enjoyed the book. They make no excuses for the way they are. They're very proud people, but they like the attention, and they like for someone to communicate in their language, and the book is in both Spanish and English.
Right.
So.
And it's short. It's a paperback type book. And
Yes,
it's
we're
easy to
changing the
read.
cover. It's in its second printing, but...
What are some of the examples in the book that you think are some of the funniest ones that you wrote?
Well, the Latin people and the American people, you know, dress differently. The Latin people dress up a lot, basically to impress other people. And the American people like to dress comfortably, like in Levi's and the faded look, the denim look. And sometimes the Cuban people shop at very expensive places, and the Americans like to shop at Sears and JCPenney's. And
well, I guess I know some Americans and some Cubans that could swap roles, I suppose.
Well, those are American Cubans.
That's true. It's Americubans, that's right. Well, it's an interesting book, it truly is. I read it. And we have a phone number for anyone who would like to go ahead and call to get the book, 661-8682.
Exactly.
Margaret, good luck with it. I know it's popular in Chicago, New York, all over. So thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Y hoy ya se puede encontrar en algunas de las librerías de nuestra área un nuevo libro que hace una comparación jocosa de las diferencias entre las culturas cubana y norteamericana. Liz Quirante nos informa a continuación sobre su autora y las metas de esta publicación.
Ser un cubanazo o ser redneck, ¿cuál es mejor? ¿Cuál es la diferencia? Margaret Valladares trató de contestar estas preguntas y mucho más en su nuevo libro titulado Cubanazo Redneck, el cual expone las diferencias entre las culturas cubana y americana.
La intención del libro consiste en tratar de obtener un mejor entendimiento entre los americanos y los cubanos, y estoy tratando de explicar las razones detrás de sus acciones y sus creencias en una forma cómica para tolerar mejor lo que se había dicho de las dos culturas.
Las descripciones escritas pueden parecer al principio un poco exageradas, pero Valladares entrevistó a cientos de personas cubanas y americanas antes de escribir su libro, tanto profesionales como trabajadores y amas de casa. ¿Sabía usted que los cubanos tienen en su dieta frijoles negros y arroz y se visten con ropa de diseñadores, mientras los americanos comen perro calientes, hamburgers y se visten en jeans? Sin embargo, lo peor de todo es que estas dos culturas no quieren aceptarse la una a la otra.
Los americanos no quieren aprender español y es malo para los niños para vivir en Miami porque es un idioma que habla media, ¿no? Y los cubanos no quieren hablar con los americanos mucho porque hay muchas cosas que ellos pueden aprender de la cultura americana.
Valladares es 100% americana y reside en Miami hace 29 años. Ella se casó con un cubano y ahora vive en Coral Gables con sus dos hijos, quienes ella trata de criar estilo cubano-americano. Valladares trata de practicar lo mejor de cada cultura. Reportando desde Coral Gables, Liz Quirantes para el noticiero Mi Visión.
Un segmento muy interesante vamos a tener ante ustedes en este momento porque vamos a presentar aquí a quien por nacimiento podemos catalogar como una americanaza, pero que por cosas del destino pues se ha convertido en una cubanaza. Y precisamente, me estoy refiriendo a Margaret Valladares, a quien damos la más cordial bienvenida en Buenas Tardes, Miami. Ella es americana, pero está casada con un médico cubano y entonces pues ha podido sentir en su propia carne, por supuesto, el impacto de las dos culturas, la cultura sajona y la cultura latina. Y eso pues le ha dado pie para escribir un libro que se llama Cubanazo Redneck. Entonces, pues, vamos a la primera pregunta, luego de dar la bienvenida a Margaret, es que nos explique qué quiere decir esto de cubanazo redneck.
Bueno, la intención del libro consiste en tratar de obtener un mejor entendimiento entre las dos culturas. Y estoy tratando de explicar las razones detrás de sus acciones y sus creencias para tiene una forma cómica para tolerar mejor lo que se había dicho de las otras personas anteriormente.
O sea, are you passing judgment? Es decir, ¿usted está juzgando a cada una de las partes involucradas?
No,
¿O
no.
está sencillamente reflejando?
No, esas cosas son, esos estereotipos son un poquito exagerados, pero tiene alguna de la verdad también. Pero yo quiero poner explicar las razones detrás de su creencia de los dos, porque yo conozco a la gente cubana y los americanos también, y yo entiendo las razones, porque los costumbres y detrás de las costumbres y todas las cosas que ellos hacen y crean. Y yo quiero que la gente está más mezclado y poner la atención de los cubanos que ellos merecen.
Usted está casada con un médico, ¿verdad?
Sí.
¿Cómo se llama él?
José Valladares.
El doctor José. ¿Cómo se empató con un cubano o una americana?
Bueno,
¿Fue por accidente o...?
No, porque yo siempre me gusta, yo prefiero los hombres cubanos porque...
Oh, thank you very much.
Sí, porque ellos visten mejor y tienen muy buenos modales y tienen mucha opulencia. Y a mí me gustan siempre los cubanos, pero mi esposo no es cubanazo.
No es cubanazo,
No.
Ni es redneck tampoco.
No.
No es nada.
No.
Entonces, ¿qué la llevó a escribir el libro? Es decir, ¿cree que con esta obra se puede lograr un mejor entendimiento de los americanos hacia los hispanos, vamos a decir? O sea, a better understanding from Americans to Cuban or Latins? That's what you intend, that's what your objective is?
Para los dos, para entender mejor los uno a otro.
Las dos culturas.
Porque muchos cubanos, amigos míos, dicen que ahora saben mucho mejor sobre los americanos.
O sea, ¿usted cree que más beneficio han logrado los hispanos que lo que han logrado los americanos con este libro?
¿Cómo?
Este libro está escrito en español y en inglés,
Sí.
es bilingüe,
Sí.
es bilingual.
Sí. Bilingual, sí.
Who benefit more from this book, the Americans or Latins?
Well, yo creo que los dos tienen que aprender mucho a uno a otro en este país, en Miami, de los dos americanos y los cubanos.
Ahora, ¿dónde se puede adquirir? ¿Dónde se puede comprar este libro?
En Books and Books en South Miami y Bookworks en Coral Gables. Tú puedes llamar 661-8682.
Y entonces se lo envían o se le envían el libro a la persona que llame.
Sí, sí, como no.
Bueno, pues Margaret Valladares, te agradecemos mucho el haber venido a Buenas Tardes Miami. Estamos seguros que este libro, que bueno, vamos a mostrarlo otra vez, se llama Cubanazo Redneck, Margaret Valladares, MS. Está traducido al español, por supuesto, ya lo escribió en inglés, lo tradujeron al español y tengo la seguridad de, como ella dice, que este libro va a ser de gran beneficio tanto para que los cubanos entiendan mejor a los americanos como los americanos a los cubanos e hispanos en general. Gracias nuevamente, Margaret.
Gracias.
Ahora vamos a una entrevista muy interesante de Pepe Hiedra con el señor Armando Palacio.
I'm holding a book called Cubanazo. Is that properly said?
Cubanazo.
Cubanazo. And under it a word is redneck. Are they one and the same?
No, they're... a Cubanazo is an exaggerated Cuban that goes out of the way to be recognized as Cuban with all the gold chains and the guayaberas, big cigar. And redneck is the American counterpoint, which has a Confederate license tag and
You mean the pickup
drinks,
truck and the roll bar and the tobacco juice on the left-hand door,
Sure, the whole nine
and
yards.
it has the deer horns on the front and the gun rack across the window.
You got it.
Ah, got one of my own parked outside. Just
I
like
bet you do.
You're talking and listening to Margaret Valladares. Said it right, didn't I?
No?
How do you say it?
Well, Valladares for the Americans, Valladares for the Cubans.
You see, that's the whole point. My name is Burke. It's for the Americans. It is for the Irish. It's for the French, the German. It's said the same way no matter where you go. It's Burke.
Okay.
So I don't want Valladares for the Spanish-speaking people and Valladares
But
for
you
us
said it wrong.
Southerners.
If you would have said it, you know...
Say it right for me.
Valladares.
Valladares?
Uh-huh.
Thank you. See how quickly I learn? This book was written by this charming and attractive lady. And what is it intended to do, Margaret? Quite seriously now, because I have read the book, and I think I'm reasonably bright, and I must confess, there are a lot of things in here that I don't get. I really don't understand what your intent is, so explain it to me.
Well, a lot of people have made comments, but nobody has really taken the time to examine the Latin culture, well, actually the Cuban culture, which I find very interesting, and compare it to the American. You know, in theory, we're all Americans, but the American that's from Fort Lauderdale type that has run away from Miami. And I compared the two and exaggerated the stereotypes we all have on both cultures to make it funny, but to get it out in the open, to talk about it. And I also wrote it in Spanish, so the people that do not speak English or read English can, you know, understand it too, and enlighten both cultures as to each other.
2 points, 2 questions come to mind. One, everybody who lives in Fort Lauderdale ran away from Miami?
No.
Only those who speak Spanish ran away from Miami?
No.
To Fort Lauderdale. Well, that's what I thought you said.
No. We got to take for granted that everybody's an individual. So when I say, I make a comment, it doesn't mean that everybody's this way or everybody's the American or the redneck that's in this book or all the Cubans are like that. Most stereotypes are based on some truth, so.
All right. Now, you were born in Miami, in Hialeah, and you lived there for a number of years. You were educated in college and all of that. You have a degree in psychology?
I have a Master of Science degree in developmental counseling.
Whatever that is. And what is it?
Well, we counsel, we do group therapy, marriage therapy, one-on-one.
I like that one-on-one stuff. That's good. Now, is your intent with this book to be funny? Is it humor? Seriously.
It's serious humor. It's things that I would like to talk about, get out in the open, discuss, and explain to both cultures.
All right, let's do it this way then. You were born and raised as an American girl, and you married a Cuban doctor, correct?
Exactly.
Did you give up all of your ways of the American girl to enter the Cuban society?
Of course not.
What did you keep?
I kept, you know, my love of this country, hanging my flag out, being orderly, knowing how to drive, waiting my turn. And
you're saying the Cubans don't do this?
Well, I find that if you go into the Latin culture is centered around children, and they have wonderful party shops, and you go in there, and if there's a group of people, they have take a number machine, and you can take a number, but a Cuban person will always find their way of getting ahead of you by asking a question and then eventually getting waited on. And I'm here, the dumb American, with a number in my hand waiting, you know, but, and, you know, I can tell you something that the American men have a lot to learn from the Cuban men.
Like what?
Like how to treat women.
You mean that you would, as an American, you don't think I treat my wife as
no, I won't talk about you.
gallantly
Okay.
as your husband treats you?
I think Latin men, I think the women's liberation has been the fault of the American men, because the Latin men treat women very specially, not as if
you may
they're
keep them barefoot and pregnant.
No, they have a very high esteem for the sanctity of motherhood and for wives, and they just put them on a pedestal.
Well, isn't it true that Cuban men have mistresses and commit more adultery than the American male?
The American male would rather be fishing with his dog, you know, than the...
And the Cuban male would what?
The Cuban male is more of a ladies' man, and the American man is a man's man.
We are going to take some time out to evaluate everything that she has said concerning adultery among the Americans and the Cubans, and you shall return.
I haven't said that. Don't put words in my mouth.
Margaret, I noticed on page 4 of your book, by the way, this book is available at all of the local bookstores and so on.
The best bookstores that do not practice censorship. Books and Books, Bookworks in South Miami. Yes, the big chains do.
You mean because they don't carry your book? They practice censorship?
Well, they carry my book, yeah. They
Maybe
do.
they
They have regional managers that dictate what books should be in the
Boy, what a terrible thing to say, that they practice censorship. If I write a book and a bookstore doesn't think it's going to sell,
no, my book
he's not obligated to have it.
Out in all the stores.
How many copies has each store had?
Well,
you mean you've had a total printing of 2,000?
Yeah.
That's a new book. Oh, how long's the book been out?
About 2 months, 3 months.
Oh, well, you're going to sell a lot of them because look at the size of it. How much the book sell for?
$3.95.
$3.95. It's certainly worth it to get that table leg propped up, isn't it? Listen,
Look,
Margaret.
it's not War and Peace. It's a funny book.
You noticed that too, huh?
Yeah.
Listen, Margaret. That's cute. I like that.
Thank you.
You're saying here, even though 14 years ago, while still in high school, I witnessed occurrences, so on, so on, so on. Then you go on to say that I really enjoyed and began only dating Cuban men because of their manners, their taste, cleanliness. I stopped right there.
Oh, don't take things out of context.
You want me to finish the sentence?
Yeah.
All right, I'll finish this. Cleanliness, education, and affluence, period. I only left out two things like affluence and education.
Okay.
But I got hung up on that word cleanliness. You're saying that if you're not Cuban, you're dirty.
No.
Well, why would you
If
write
A
that?
follows B, C doesn't always follow. Because they enjoy dressing well and they have nice manners, they hold the door for you. They treat you like, that doesn't mean, see, American men treat women, they treat their friends or buddies better than they treat the women sometimes. The Cuban men treat women special. That doesn't mean they look down upon them and keep them barefoot and pregnant. They treat them with equality, but also fairly. And I find the American men might treat women not even with equality as they would their buddies.
You believe that?
That's the one that said he likes to go fishing with his dog. What are you talking about?
No, with his wife.
He likes to go fishing with his wife.
No, he said he would, no.
Instead of fooling around with other women. Isn't that what you said?
I agree that I agree American men do that. But
Do you approve of Cuban men fooling around?
But what he also said was that he would go fishing without his wife if she didn't go.
That's right.
So,
That's
well,
his privilege, but you
prove
didn't
my
answer my
point for me.
question. Do you approve?
Well, you didn't let me finish my statement.
Go
okay,
ahead,
go ahead.
finish
Do
it.
I approve of it? Of course not.
But you excuse it.
I didn't excuse it.
In your book, you excused it.
Where?
I don't know what page, but I'll
Well,
find it.
then find it.
All
'cause I
right,
don't
young lady,
excuse
you
it.
standing at the podium.
Yes. You see, I lived in Little Havana for about 8 years.
You're American?
Yes, I'm from a little town, farm town in Indiana. And what I have found in Miami is such a variation in culture. Sure, there's good points about Latin males and American men.
Sure.
Me, I go on all of them, but
Why does you don't like men?
no, I'm married, but they don't like me.
Well, what's that got to do with
Well,
it?
you shouldn't be looking for
You like
him.
your
You're
husband?
married.
But what the
Do you like
point
your
I was,
husband?
50% of the time.
Sounds like a wonderful marriage, doesn't it?
It's
Listen,
lasted 8 years.
I think I have the solution for you. I have Dr. Ruth's unlisted number.
Hey, that's
If
good.
you'd like to call her. Thank
He
you.
needs it more than I do.
Thank you very much. I won't let you stand here and berate your husband. All right. Yes.
Did you ever go fishing?
No. Well,
Did you-
yeah, I
How about
did.
your
I
husband?
did. I did.
Okay, you go everywhere with him? Every
No.
place?
No.
Well, that's what they sometimes, he goes fishing, she stays home, and she goes whatever she wants to do, you know.
Okay.
You don't have to be inseparable. And, I mean, I don't know what is this that, I'm married to an American, and he treats me very well, let me tell you. It's been 27 years, and I can't complain about it. And I'm Cuban, okay?
Do you like Cuban men?
I do, too, yes, why not? I mean...
Well, now you can't, but you know.
Oh, why not?
Well, wait a minute. You
Excuse
say
me.
now. Excuse me, honey. Now you can't.
Well, she's married.
Well, can't you like someone?
Well...
In spite of the fact that you're married? Are
Well-
you confusing liking with sex?
No, you are.
No. Why else would you say she's married? She can't like anyone, right?
All right, I'm just...
That's right.
Amen, amen. Very good, very good. I have a lot of friends that are married to Cubans, and they're not as nice as as you make them in the book, really. They are everything, within the Americans, within the Cubans. It's got to be the person. It's not,
Well,
all the
everybody's an
Cubans are good and all the
individual.
Americans are,
No, wait a minute. My book is not anti-American, it's not anti-Cuban, and it's not pro-American. If you read my book, you'll
I'll
see
have to-
that you can't tell where I stand.
Oh, yes, you can.
No, you can't.
You
I
are.
can.
Oh, come on. All right, where do I stand?
You are, this is a touchy thing to say because it's going to be misinterpreted. You believe, and you have stated in your book, that Cubans who have come to this country are more patriotic than Americans. And I, as an American, resent the hell out of that.
Well,
I got to tell you, when I read the book, I took it tongue-in-cheek for a while. Hold it. No, you wait a minute.
Well,
no,
you're
wait
gonna
a
talk.
minute. Then it's going to be your turn.
No,
oh, yes.
You're taking things
yes.
out of context, and
when
you're
I'm
saying
through,
your opinion.
You
and
will
these people are
talk.
agreeing
You
with
do
you.
have a big mouth.
Well, excuse me.
That I will if you'll be quiet.
I'm the one with the big mouth, but you're the one that keeps talking.
That's right. And when I'm through, you will have the same opportunity. As I was saying...
I see the time is running out.
As I was saying, for you or me?
For me.
Good. As I was saying, I am no less patriotic than any other person, whether he came from Austria or Germany or France, but to single out a group and say he's more patriotic than an American, I resent.
Okay.
I truly do, and you said it in the book.
Show me where I said it.
I'll find it before we leave tonight, and I will show it to you. It's here.
I think that I see the Latin people with their signs up who they want to vote for on 8th Street, and I don't see the Americans fighting in that. Okay.
Let me tell you something, Margaret. Going around screaming anti-communist slogans does not make you a patriot.
No, but I don't think that you realize what it's like to all of a sudden have to leave a country with the clothes on your back. And
Do you?
Yeah, I know it's very bad, yes.
Do you know?
I don't
Did
think
you ever have to
know.
leave a country? I wouldn't call Hialeah a separate country.
No.
And then they didn't drive you out of Hialeah either.
I think that if you had a taste of communism,
You
just
can't
a
speak
little
on that
bit,
subject.
you would
Wait
be,
just a minute. Wait just a minute.
you would also be anti-communist because you would see what it would be like before.
But you don't have
Listen,
any
you say
notion
I had a
other
big mouth,
than
but you don't let
what
me finish my
okay,
statement.
Go ahead,
okay?
quickly.
You live in a country and you can see, and that is your experience, that the country has turned and gone communist. You lost everything you had, your belongings, and you came to this country with nothing, okay? And you saw what precipitated how the situation was. And if you even smell communism in this country, you're going to be afraid, and you're going to talk about anti-communism and be against it too.
Okay, you through?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, I don't go on 8th Street, and I don't go
What's wrong with 8th Street? 8th Street's great.
About the communists and everything, but I did leave my country with the clothes on my back, and I can't talk about it. I know what it is. I don't have to be afraid of anything.
So what's your point?
What's your point in saying that?
What's your point?
Let her make it.
But I mean,
You are saying
interrupting
that the Americans are not patriotic because they don't go.
I didn't say they weren't.
What are you saying, honey?
She doesn't know what she's saying.
That's what I mean. She doesn't know. You gotta be on my shoes to know what it is, okay?
Pardon me?
You got to be in my shoes before you make a point.
You
And I
gotta
did
be in
leave
my
my
shoes
country,
because you're not
sweetheart.
American.
Excuse me?
Okay, she wanted me to find it.
What did she say?
She said you were not an American.
I am an American.
You were
probably
born
more
here.
than you, and I
You were
was
born
not born
here.
here, and I probably feel more for this country than you
Well,
do.
you can't
okay?
be in my... Look, this book, listen. You got a room full of Americans. If you had a room full of Cubans here, he would be booed. But what I'm saying is this conversation,
How
this
many
book,
Cubans
this
here,
book,
excuse me? Anybody else but me?
this book was not meant to fight over. And this conversation, in my appearance, it was not here to fight over. It's to come out and have a good time and enjoy. Not to attack me
Oh, I'm not
or to attack
attacking
Ellen
you.
Burke. But it was to come here and have a friendly conversation to enlighten each other as to the other culture. I'm not anti-American. And if you have you read the book?
No, I haven't.
Well, then
but
when
I
you
will.
read it, then you can talk about it. Because he's taking things out of context and he's giving his opinion. And it's not fair to me.
I'm not taking anything out of context.
He
I'll
is.
read this
Okay,
right
read
here.
something.
This is based on a survey that I did with professional Americans and Cubans alike. This is not my opinion.
Most Cubans are more patriotic than most Americans.
That was a survey.
I'm reading it in a book that you
Read
wrote.
the top, what it says there.
As a Cuban, what would you like to say to the American people in as few words as possible?
Thank you.
That's what it says at
It's
the
a
top.
survey. That's
And
a
then
quote.
it says here, most Cubans are more patriotic than most Americans. We seem to take more interest in elections by voting.
That's a quote from a Cuban person, individual. Okay?
All right, let's get to that, Jennifer. Thank you, dear. Go ahead.
It's
You
not
said
fair
that
to me.
Cuban men are more with women. They're more respectful, or whatever you said. Are you talking about the Cubans that are from Cuba, or the ones that are born here?
The Cubans that with Cuban heritage?
Yeah.
Both, yes.
You're talking about both?
Yes.
Because I know a lot of Cubans that are born here. They're not as respectful as the ones that come from Cuba.
Not all are, but I think it's a rule
And
most of them are.
I'm Italian and I'm Latin, and I know I have a cousin that comes from Italy. And what you said about opening doors and different things, we don't do that. I don't, let's put it that way. Maybe a lot of Americans, but he does because he was brought up that way.
Let's, thank you very much.
That's it.
Let's take a moment out. And when we return, I would like to talk to you about the general opinion among the community here concerning bilingualism. You do that?
Sure.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment. Margaret Reeves, who wrote a book called Cubanazo, which is an interesting book. It's written in English and Spanish. And Margaret was born in Hialeah, married a Cuban man, a doctor. And did your mother tell you to marry a doctor?
No.
No.
She didn't tell me to marry a Cuban, that's for sure.
Was she upset when you married a Cuban?
A little bit, yeah.
Why?
Because I guess it's probably easier to marry the same culture, same religion.
Was your husband's family upset when he married you?
Perhaps.
What do you mean, perhaps? Huh?
Like I said, it's easier to marry the same culture. And,
I met your husband. He's a charming gentleman.
Thank you.
He really is. I enjoy him very much.
I told you.
You told me. That's right. You did tell me he was a charming gentleman. You have the best of both worlds, don't you? When you walk into a room full of Cubans, what is the response of the Cuban wives and girls there, ladies, women?
They usually clam up and they sense me as the other woman type, the blonde hair American, you know.
You're the other woman?
No, see, you keep putting words in my mouth.
Well, I didn't say other woman. The other woman type.
Yes.
All right, you're the other woman type.
They're Americana, you know.
When a Cuban, a beautiful Cuban woman walks in to your group of Americans, is there the same kind of response?
The response is more that, you know, she's trying to outdress us. She's trying to put on the dog, you know.
All right, young lady.
Yes, let me tell you that I am a Cuban, married very happily to another Cuban. I have 3 kids, all born here and raised here in Miami. And my oldest one, which is 25, she's been dating Cubans for quite a long time now. But I've been trying all this time to turn around her taste and date Americans, because I think, and I have seen before, that the mixed works marvelous. It's my daughter's personal advantage.
What mix?
Cubans American.
But male or male?
Either way.
Male American?
Either way. I'm talking because mine happens to be at the time a girl, but it probably would work the same way around. And let me tell you, even in my own family, there's another kind of a mix, and they work terrific. And my personal feeling is that this country is so great because the great mix that made them and built him in the first time.
You got it. That really is the answer.
I want to say something. There's a consensus among the Cuban community that the male being a Cuban with American women does not work as well as the other way around.
I don't see it that way.
It is.
I see it any way you put it.
All right,
because they think
thank
the
you.
American woman is too liberated for the Cuban male.
Thank you so much.
That's the reason I love my daughter to marry an American.
Of course.
Margaret, I'm having a bit of a problem, very seriously. This is not an attack, certainly. But I'm having a bit of a problem with your using phrases like the consensus is, or a survey was taken. You know, I spent a lot of years in news, and when you didn't know exactly what you were doing, you would say things like, It is rumored that, or a reliable source says. What is the consensus?
It's true.
Who are those who participated in the
Latin
survey?
people believe, and I explained it to you, but you cut me off, that the American woman is too liberated for the Cuban male.
That's not what I'm talking
about. The American male is very good for the Cuban woman because the American male is faithful to his wife, and he's a good. Okay. He's always there.
You've made
that's
that
why,
point, and I'm not taking exception to that point at all.
Well, maybe it's my terminology. Consensus.
You're not listening to my question.
Well, that's what you said. You're putting it down for saying consensus.
My question is, who participated in the survey? A consensus is really the results of interviews or a great number of people coming up with the same opinion, and yet you're using these phrases, and I don't know where you're getting the information. What I'm asking is, are these your personal opinions?
No, the opinions of Latin, the group of the Latin people feel that way.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just have to take your word for it. All right, sir.
Yes, I live in a building where there's all ethnic backgrounds, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Haitians, maybe the League of Nations there. I get along with every one of them because these people are friendly type people no matter where they're born. I see the couples get along, the children get along, they all speak English pretty well. I don't see anybody fighting with one another. I even have a neighbor across all the Haitian people. I have a neighbor across all Puerto Rican, the other side Cuban.
I think Cuban people are very friendly.
What about the other people that he mentioned? Are they friendly?
I'm here to talk about Cubans, but in American in the sense that I explained at the
Do
beginning.
you think that, thank you very much, sir. Do you think that the Cuban people need a spokesperson in the sense that you are speaking for them?
In the sense that, you know, I understand their culture, I understand my culture, and I can speak English well enough to explain what they won't maybe take the time to do.
No, but that wasn't really my question. I have never, and I've been doing this a lot of years, I have never interviewed a guest who spoke for the cultural practices of the Hungarians, or the Czechs,
because
or the
they
Irish,
are not as
or the
interesting.
Germans.
You don't have an influx
They
of
are
them
not
as you do
as
the Cubans.
interesting?
Wait a minute. You don't. Do you have all those? Do you have that many Hungarians here as you do Cubans?
No, but that
all
has
right,
nothing to
there.
do
You
with
proved
it.
my point.
All right, sir.
What is your opinion about other Latin men? Example, Puerto Ricans, Colombians, Ecuadorians, as opposed to Cuban guys? Because the way I'm hearing you, it seems to me that you think the Cuban guy's the greatest guy in the world.
Well,
what's your opinion about the other Latin guys? And let's have your honest opinion.
No, they're all different. The South American, the Nicaraguan.
Well,
we have a lot of those here, but they're totally different.
Give me a comparison.
Well,
let's compare a Puerto Rican guy to a Cuban guy.
Not my job, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Now, I spoke to you once on the phone when I was told you were going to be my guest, and I said to you, if the state legislature, Margaret, were to pass a bill demanding a referendum in the state, giving the people of the state an opportunity to vote upon making English the official language of the state, which would mean that there would be no ballots in any other language, no court papers in any other language other than English, and interpreters would be provided for those who needed them and that sort of thing. But the only thing you would see in anything other than English that was in any way affiliated with government would be street signs, which are international anyway. And I said, how would you vote? And you said you would vote against that, which I assume means you would vote for bilingualism. Is that correct?
I probably would not even vote.
Well, that's not the American way.
Yes, it's
in
the American
America,
way.
we vote for the
you have
things
the right
we believe
to vote.
in.
You don't have to vote. That is the American way.
Okay.
You know why I wouldn't vote? Because
Why?
I can speak Spanish. I don't feel that strongly about it either way. We have leaders from Cuba that came over here, and I said this before, they're going to be leaders here. They're probably going to get it changed. What can you do about it?
Well, Margaret, you told me you would vote for the bilingual point of view.
Well, I will not.
Have you changed your mind since our conversation?
I probably won't vote. I probably won't vote at all. Because my understanding of it was that they would have interpreters for the people that could not speak English in the courtroom.
or any other ethnic group.
But, you know, to me,
Well, you know what I'm really asking, and you're,
Well, how would you
you're
vote?
toying
How would
with
you
me.
vote?
Oh, I would vote against it because I want English to be the official language of the United States.
that's not what you told me on the phone.
Yes, it is,
That's
Margaret.
not what
You're not going to put words in my
You
mouth.
told me that you think everybody should learn other languages.
Absolutely.
Well,
But that
that's-
has nothing to do with making English the official language of this country.
Well.
I don't want to see one tax dollar
How many
spent.
languages do you speak?
Margaret, may I speak now?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I don't want to see a single tax dollar being spent for the benefit of understanding of any single ethnic group. Now, I have no objections to the ballots and all of the other documents being in Spanish if it's also printed in every other language. Swahili, French, German, whatever. Wonderful.
Okay, can I talk? Can I talk?
But until such time as the law makes that a fact, I don't want to see the demands of the Cuban community upon the other members of the community. And it's purely a fairness doctrine on my part.
We also have South Americans and Nicaraguans here also. But how many languages do you speak?
11.
11?
Yes.
Can you speak Spanish?
That's the only one I'm very poor at. Margaret, I want to thank you very much for being my guest. I would certainly advise all of you to rush out and buy the book. I'm serious. No, I think that it's insightful. You will understand Margaret. I don't want you to get any erroneous opinions of her because of the way I may have spoken, which she misinterpreted entirely. But I think you should buy the book.
I think they did, but...
You didn't, did you?
No, but they did.
Of course not. Thank you, Margaret.
Okay.
We'll be back in just a moment, and we're going to, at that point, let you travel astrally to other planets and wherever you want to go.
Yo no soy solo redneck. Ni soy cubanaza. Yo soy americubana.
Cubanazo Redneck, para lo que somos por dentro. 661-8682.
Pobrecita, casada con un compatriota mío. Vamos a darle el pésame. ¿Tú te sientes mitad y mitad?
Yo siento como una cubana adoptada.
Ay, Dios mío. ¿De dónde es tu familia?
Mis padres, de la familia de mi mamá, de Inglaterra, y mi papá es de Alemania. Pero nació mi padre aquí en los Estados Unidos. Pero hay mucha diferencia de una persona de otro estado en los Estados Unidos, como otros países, como visten, como hablan, el acento, la comida. Sí. Pero,
¿qué te atrajo a ti la primera vez, al principio, a la cultura hispana? ¿Qué fue lo que te llamó la atención de la cultura hispana?
¿Del hispano o del cubana?
Vamos a hablar de hispanos en general para que todo el mundo nos entienda. A ti en este caso es cubano porque es lo que vivimos aquí.
No, porque yo prefiero los cubanos. Bueno, yo pienso en una cultura con mucha salsa, mucha flavor, mucha... a mí me gusta mucho. Los hombres son más... Eso van a matarme, pero son más románticos, más visten muy fino y ponen muy perfume muy rico. Son muy buenos con las mujeres. Yo pienso.
¿Son buenos con las mujeres? ¿Y no es verdad eso de que los cubanos y también los hispanos tienen fama de ser machistas?
Yo no sé, yo no tengo esa experiencia, pero sí, eso pasa porque la mujer cubana se siente como reina, como la princesa Diana, nunca puede divorciar. Ahora, ese día son diferentes, hay muchos divorciados, pero siente que no quiere votar a la familia, los hijos, no quiere problemas y luce de otra manera, a otro lado, cuando eso pasa, pero... Yo no soy...
Espérate.
Ok, yo me voy.
Espérate un momentico. Tú estás diciendo que el hombre cubano, en el caso, estamos diciendo cubano porque el marido de ella y la gente con que ella compara a los americanos son cubanos, que son los de aquí. Tú dices que tienden a salir con otras mujeres y ser infieles cuando están casados, más que los norteamericanos, ¿sí?
Déjame ver si yo entiendo, porque es una... habla muy larga.
Ok, estás diciendo que los cubanos son más infieles después de casados que los americanos.
Estoy diciendo que si eso pasa, las americanas siempre
se divorcian. ¿Y las cubanas?
Las cubanas piensan más antes que divorcio. Para los niños, para la posición de la madre, de ser mujer. Ella piensa es la verdad, la reina de la familia. La otra mujer no es nada importante a ella.
O sea, la otra no importa, sí, porque ella es la reina.
Sí, yo pienso.
¿Cuál otras diferencias tú has notado? Por ejemplo, ¿cómo tú estás criando a tus niños?
Yo soy una madre americana, porque yo tengo una hijastra de 14 años y yo no estoy yo me voy a hablar un poquito español, no estoy tan estricta con ella.
Estricta,
con otro padre cubano, pero yo creo en chaperón, yo creo en ser paga mucha atención.
¿A ti te chaperonearon?
Sí.
¿Tú saliste con chaperona?
Sí. No, a mí yo no.
¿Y por qué tú le vas a hacer eso a tu pobre hija?
Mi mamá es americana, pero...
¿Y por qué tú le vas a hacer eso a tu hija?
Bueno, gracias a Dios que mi hija es muy bonita y no quiero problemas y yo pienso mejor que yo salgo con ella porque no quiero problemas. It's good for the goose, it's not good for the gander.
Ok, con este pedacito de Spanglish vamos a ir un momentico a comerciales y regresamos enseguida con nuestros profesores. Ya venimos.
Un 25% es de Puerto Rico, el resto de la población se divide, no se está seguro, entre grupos como cubanos, salvadoreños, y el resto son los países latinoamericanos que hacen el 100%. Sin embargo, todas estas diferencias son bastante pequeñas, por eso yo creo que este libro puede servirle a mucha gente, porque nuestra invitada, que es norteamericana, que escribe aquí su 5º libro, ha escrito bajo el título de Cubanazo Redneck, el libro número 5, y a lo mejor puede interpretar no solamente a los cubanos, sino también a los mexicanos y a los puertorriqueños y a todos los hispanos en general. Recibamos con un gran aplauso a Margaret Valladares. Margaret, en primer lugar, yo sé que usted principalmente habla inglés, entonces a lo mejor le cuesta un poco el español, le voy a hablar un poco más lento.
Sí.
Pero ¿cuál es la razón por la cual usted escribió este libro?
Porque he vivido en toda mi vida en Miami y yo veo muchas distintas culturas, las ambas culturas, de los hábitos y cómo se creen las costumbres y cómo se portan las suegras y todo en mi vida. Y yo pienso que hay una necesidad para ese libro porque la gente no sabe a qué hora que llega una boda cubana o cualquier cosa. Porque
es diferente.
Sí.
Por ejemplo, ¿a qué hora hay que llegar a una boda americana si es a las 9?
A las 9 en punto.
¿Y a qué hora hay que llegar a una boda cubana si es a las 9?
No, sobre a las 10:30. Sí.
¿Ah, sí? Ya. ¿Cuáles son las principales diferencias entre un cubanazo y un redneck?
Bueno, un redneck es una persona que le gusta manejar camiones con ruedas anchas y le gusta oír música jibara y tomar mucha cerveza y tiene un acento sureño. Y un cubano le gusta poner guayaberas y un sombrero y cigarro muy grande y muchas joyerías y prendas real o fantasía cualquiera.
Ya, a ver, hablemos un poco de la diferencia entre, porque usted como es casada con un cubano, la diferencia entre una familia americana y una familia cubana.
Bueno, la familia cubana cree que el individuo está tan fuerte como el grupo está tan fuerte como el individuo, pero los americanos le gustan de ser separados, rebelan de ser un parte de un grupo. Y,
quieren ser isolados,
sí,
solos.
Sí.
Ya, eso diría es la principal característica diferente.
No, los cubanos les gusta viajar en bandadas, todos los lugares, en los restaurantes.
¿Todos juntos?
Sí, juntos.
¿Y los americanos les gusta solo?
No, solo.
Ahora, y esta última pregunta. ¿Qué buscan las mujeres cubanas en los hombres y qué buscan las mujeres americanas en los hombres porque usted es americana?
Las mujeres cubanas les gusta un hombre que es un buen proveedor, tenga casa grande, mucho dinero y buen padre y una persona ese no se importa la otra. Una persona con un nivel social muy alto en la comunidad. Los americanos no se importa eso. Ese quiere solamente un hombre que compartir arregla la casa y cuida a los niños. Y la cosa que la mujer debe hacer, él le gusta hacer ayuda con la mujer. Y le gusta mucha independencia en la casamiento.
En la relación.
Sí, en la relación. Y le gusta tener su propio banco separado, cuenta de banco separado.
Una cosa el marido,
Trabajo.
otra cosa la señora.
Sí.
Más
exacto.
independencia en general.
Sí.
Muy bien, Margaret, muchísimas gracias por haber venido a nuestro programa. Que le vaya muy bien con este libro, Cubanazo Redneck. Y el aplauso es para Margaret Valladares.
Gracias.
Continúa con Don Francisco.
Latino, hay una mujer norteamericana que se casó con un hispano. Ella es escritora y su experiencia matrimonial la ha llevado a escribir un libro que tituló Cubanazo Redneck. Se llama Margaret Valladares y nos da su opinión sobre este tema.
Mi opinión, Don Francisco, es que el hombre hispano hace sentir a la mujer como si fuera la única mujer del mundo. Todos sus pensamientos giran alrededor de la mujer. Los hombres de otra nacionalidad hacen sentir a la mujer como si fuera un pedazo de mueble. Los hombres hispanos son los mejores en vestir, son los mejores en modales y lo que mejor huelen. Y cuando hablan con la mujer, hablan suavecito y con respeto. Por eso, Don Francisco, yo tengo mi Latin lover.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias por esa opinión. Un aplauso para la señora Valladares.
So, tell us, Margaret, why this obsession with Cuban men?
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
You are obsessed. Why? Why?
I don't know.
What do they have that I haven't discovered? Huh?
I don't know. They just everything about them, the way they dress, the way their choice of cologne, the way they treat women, holding the doors for us, and I don't know. They do have a few negative qualities, but I just want to. Well, they are a little bit macho. They are a little bit possessive.
No hitting.
After the show.
Okay. What else? What else?
I'll hit them after the show.
Okay, I know you hit back.
Well, I don't know. It's just the way they are. They're more romantic, I think.
More romantic?
Yeah.
Than whom?
Than all the rest.
Than all the rest?
No, I mean, there are other romantic nationalities, but they're just, I don't know, I like them above all other types of men. I do like other men, don't get me wrong, but...
Well, you're now divorced, but I remember that when your book came out, it was a big splash because you kept saying all the cultural differences between yourself and them when you met them, the sisters, the visits to the hospital, the funerals, and you were like sort of freaked out because this was like so intensely clashed with your culture.
Yeah, I just find a lot of opposites between the American and the Cuban cultures.
Like what?
Well, first of all, the Americans like to be more casual, and they like to dress more like in jeans and more relaxed, and the Latin people like to get dressed up everywhere they go. The American people like to be very punctual, you know, on time, and the Latin people... Okay. I'm not sure I understand the applause. Is it for the Americans or that you know what I'm going to say next? I don't know. If you get an invitation to a wedding or a baptism or whatever, and it's a Latin invitation, go an hour later. And although, you know, I think that might be changing now. I think they're catching on, you know, but I just find a lot of opposites.
I knew somebody that used to print 2 sets of invitations, one for her Anglo friends and one for her Spanish friends. And the Spanish invitations had an hour later from the real hour, so they would show up on time. It's true. What else? For example, I know hospital visits are a joke because Americans are very religious about hospital visits, and Hispanics all hide in the bathroom, all 18 of them, you know, to wait until the nurse leaves, you know?
I bring chicken soup in ICU, and American people are to the rule and to, you know, follow the rules that you have, and I think the Latin culture, the Cuban culture is more laid back, and what happens, happens. The rules are guidelines.
Why do I have on my card saints, fists, 2 beepers, and overdress?
What was the first one? Oh, okay. Well, I want you to know I wore my mal de ojo today.
Mal de ojo. She's wearing a little eye for the evil eye. Why that? Why did you wear it to my show? How dare you?
Lisette lent this to me. I don't really believe in it. I think it's kind of funny. You know, maybe I should say this is going to fall off. If it falls off, that means someone gave me the evil eye, and I have to clean it by putting salt and water on it, I believe. But and he's hiding it now, but he has a huge St. Lazaro, and
it's small.
Who is San Lazaro?
It's small.
Who is San Lazaro? Remember, everybody that's watching the show has no idea what you're wearing. What is it? Explain it to us.
It's a saint.
Yes. Yes.
It's a saint that I worship. You know, I ask for it, and you know, ask him for favors.
Is he a Cuban saint?
Yeah. I would say San Lazaro, huh?
San Lazaro Perez is a Cuban saint. It's very funny because I know that I'm Cuban, and I see in the houses, in the gardens, people have little statues of virgins, and you know the other people that live in this country pass by and go, who's a visitor in the yard, you know, and that's what we want to do here today. We want everybody to stop being afraid of each other, because it's important that we all understand each other, and that's what we want to do today here. I'm going to go to commercial, and I'll be right back.
Martin, are you worried about her with her hair?
With her what?
Hair.
Her taking time with her hair?
Not at all.
Because it was a little damp tonight, and my wife said, oh, my hair's falling out. And it takes her 2 hours to put it up. You might as well get used to it. Because just, you know, and they don't use the same products as we do. They have to use the black hair products for their hair.
What did you want to say about your son?
Oh, I'm very proud of my son. This is my wife, and we've been married now for 2 years and went together for 4 years. And I'm very happy, and he's just a happy little guy.
Thank you. Thank you. You were right here. You wanted to say something?
I want to pass the couple in the end, because I'm married to a Cuban man, and we have a lot of difficulty with holidays of what family...
What are you? What are you?
I'm Cuban also.
So then you have no problem, right? Right. Yeah, right.
So how do you guys handle going to holidays, especially because of your mixed culture?
Always a deal. It's a Jewish thing.
Christmas is a big... Christmas is very important at my house, obviously. So we made the promise to my family that we would always spend Christmas with them. And his family doesn't really celebrate Hanukkah.
We also have a Hanukkah bush. It's a Christmas tree, but we call it a Hanukkah bush. And instead of just whatever you put at the top, we have a Jewish star at the top. And we hang like little matzah things. So it brings everything together nicely.
And, well, his family goes to Florida for Christmas, Hanukkah time. So we said that we would go to Thanksgiving at their house.
But split up.
Right, but also it enables our children to have all the holidays. We can have, you know, the Easter bunny will hide, you know, matzah instead of eggs. And
Your
just, you know, have
children.
everything.
How long have you been married, did you say?
3 months.
And you're talking about your children, so you're working very actively.
Well, we have
at
the dogs.
Yeah,
So.
looking forward to it. Thanks. Who was around? Sure.
I'd like to ask Teresa and Martin, how did your parents react when you brought each other home?
Actually, okay, my mom came to visit here, and she knew about Teresa that I have a new girlfriend, but she didn't exactly...
You didn't tell her.
I just...
You didn't tell her what?
That I was black.
Oh, Lord.
I was like, you know, we were talking, and she's like in the city, and I was like, we're gonna go out to dinner and everything. I was like, did you mention to her? He was like, no. I showed her a picture when she got here. Could have gave the woman a coronary. But she was great.
What about your family? You bring in a...
Actually, he
German.
hasn't met my dad yet, but my mom loves him. I think she likes him more than she likes me, actually. She's so sweet. That's what she keeps saying.
Who else do we have around here? Up. Now, this is a hair that took time. I can see that.
Yeah, I had a question for the couple on this end. Was it a mutual decision that you decide to raise your kids under the Jewish religion?
Yeah, I would say so. She studied at where we went to university. She studied Jewish culture and heritage, so she taught me more than I actually knew about it, which was
really?
interesting. And you know, she's going to teach our kid about it.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And I think the more they're exposed to, the better, so.
Okay, we have an expert. We're not going to decide all of this on our own. Dugan Romano is an American. She's married to an Italian, and also the author of Intercultural Marriages, Promises and Pitfalls. She will explain to us why some intercultural marriages succeed while others fail. Why?
Why?
It's a big question, but it's basically what we're talking about here.
Well, you go back to why some marriages fail while others succeed, and then you go into the intercultural ones. I think that you can make an analogy that sometimes people are attracted to the foreign couple because what's like a pair of shoes, the exotic foreign shoes, look so wonderful in the very beginning, and you buy them because they're fascinating and they have those wonderful pointy toes, and then you put them on and the pointy toe maybe pinches the foot a little bit and you say, this isn't quite so neat, I don't think I like this. But it depends on the quality of the leather. Does the shoe give a little or not? You know, if the shoe gives a little, it takes the shape of the foot. If it doesn't, there's some calluses that come up. And I think this is kind of
what kind of compromises do they have to do on both sides for it to really work? What are we talking about here?
We're talking about being sensitive to the other person's culture, liking the other person's culture, wanting to participate in it. We're talking about people who want to allow the other person to be full in the culture they are, not to obliterate it, not to deny it, not to try to cover it up, or to force them to enter completely into their own culture.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I agree with what you're saying 100% because people have asked me, how have I adapted to the Cuban culture as a sacrifice? And it hasn't been a sacrifice to me at all. I like it. I like everything about it. I enjoy it. I agree with what you say 100%.
What about a little bit of submission? Does it have to be like a little bit of submission on one part, you know, to integrate into the other side?
Can I say something?
Sure.
These are my exotic shoes.
I bet you like the exotic legs too. She's a dancer. What about that? What about just...
It depends on the cultures. Now, some cultures require submission. You have cultures where they are, say, a male-dominant kind of culture, and the woman may be used to that kind of a culture, and so for her to submit to the man is perfectly natural. If you have a woman who comes from an egalitarian kind of culture where they're equal, and she marries one that's male-dominant, then you're going to have more trouble. If the woman comes from the submissive culture and marries someone who is in the egalitarian one, then you've got a better marriage, you've got a better chance.
There's a lot of macho Hispanic men, but there's a lot of macho Italian men.
Yeah.
Are black men macho?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, you have both. You have macho men.
Is it not like a culture trait like with our men? They're, you know, more macho.
See, I wouldn't generalize that way, but there are macho black men, definitely.
How about Jewish machos?
Well, I would have to say the analogy with the shoe are more of a sandal. There's like no limits. If you don't have limits, you're not constraining yourself, and then there's no problem. Why constrain yourself? And I think macho is not in the physical appearance. It's
No,
just,
it's no.
maybe.
He,
Even
yeah.
though I got that too, but
He
Are you?
He is, but in a different. Like he's like, I don't want you to work, and I don't want you to ever have to do anything, and
right.
the woman on the pedestal kind.